Choice is the most honest thing a person can offer. Not feelings. Feelings arrive without permission, without consultation, without any input from the person experiencing them. Not attention. Attention can be managed, redirected, disciplined into compliance with what is appropriate or convenient or socially legible. Not even love in its early stages, which has the involuntary quality of weather rather than the deliberate quality of architecture. Choice is different. Choice is what happens after all of that, after the feeling has arrived and been examined and survived the examination, after the attention has been given its full reign and what it found has been fully understood, after the love has been felt in the complete, honest, this is what this is way that leaves no room for self-deception. Choice is what a person does with all of that once they have it. The deliberate, conscious, I have looked at my options and I have looked at you and I am choosing you act of a human being who is old enough to know what choice costs and young enough to still believe it is worth making. Someone younger than you has made that choice, not drifted toward it, not fallen into it by accident or by the convenient availability of your presence or by the temporary suspension of their better judgment in a moment of weakness, made it deliberately with full awareness of what they were choosing and what they were choosing over and what the choosing would require of them, with a specific clear-eyed understanding of someone who looked at the gap between your ages, looked at it directly, without flinching, without softening it into something more comfortable, and decided that the gap was not a reason, that the thing on the other side of the gap was worth more than any convenience or social legibility or ease of explanation that choosing within their own age range would have provided. They chose the gap specifically. That is the extraordinary thing that these cards are asking me to bring to you today. Not that someone younger is attracted to you. Attraction has its own logic and its own indifference to the categories we try to keep it within. That someone younger, with all the options available to them, with full awareness of the easier paths, with complete understanding of what they were walking away from and what they were walking toward, chose you, chose the age gap, chose the particular, specific, not simple from the outside love story that your particular combination and their particular combination creates together. Drop the word chosen in the comments right now and subscribe to this channel if you are not already here, because what I am about to show you the full picture of this person's choice, what it took to make it, what it means that they made it, and what it is going to look like in your life when it arrives in its full expression, is one of the most genuinely moving things I have had the opportunity to bring to a reading in a long time. Let me begin with who this person is, the specific quality of who they are, because the choice they have made tells you a great deal about their character, and I want to name what it tells you with the precision it deserves. They are someone who thinks for themselves. That sounds simple, and it is not simple. In a world where so much of what people do in their romantic lives is shaped by external expectation, by what makes sense to their friends, by what their family will approve of, by what fits the narrative of how things are supposed to go at their particular age and stage of life, this person has developed the specific capacity to look past all of that and identify what they actually want, not what they are supposed to want, what they actually want, and to pursue it with the particular steadiness of someone who has made a genuine internal peace with the distance between their choice and the easier, more expected alternatives. that capacity to want what you actually want rather than what you are supposed to want, and to pursue it despite the friction, is not common. It is developed through the specific experience of having tried the expected thing and found it insufficient, through enough living to understand the difference between what looks right from the outside and what feels right from the inside, through the particular courage of someone who has decided that their own truth is worth more than other people's comfort with their choices. This person has that courage. The choice they have made about you is the evidence of it. They are also someone whose maturity exceeds their age, not in the way that is sometimes claimed about young people without real support in the demonstrable, specific, this is visible in how they navigate things way. The maturity of someone who feels things deeply and thinks about what they feel rather than simply acting on it, who has a relationship with their own interior life that produces wisdom rather than just sensation, who brings to their choices, including this one, especially this one, a quality of consideration that turns choice from impulse into architecture. The choice to be with you is architecture, something they have built deliberately, something they have returned to and examined from multiple angles and found sound, something they have decided to stand on. Now, let me tell you what the choosing actually looked like from the inside, the process of it, because this was not a simple, frictionless arriving at a decision. It had texture, it had resistance, it had the specific difficulty of someone who is choosing against the grain of what is expected and who has to do the interior work of making that choice something they can stand fully inside. It began with the recognition that you were different, not different in the vague everyone is different sense, different in the specific sense of someone who encountered you and found that you did not fit the categories they had been working with, did not fit the framework of the people their own age who surround them, not because you are better, but because you are operating from a different depth, a different settled quality, a different relationship to who you are and what you want and what you bring to the people you love. They felt that difference immediately, before they were prepared to do anything with it, before the choice was even something they were consciously considering. Simply as an experience, the experience of being with someone who felt different in a way that mattered, whose presence had a quality that their ordinary life did not consistently provide, whose way of being in the world, grounded, specific, deeply real, produced in them something they found themselves wanting more of without initially understanding what the wanting meant. Then came the recognition that the wanting was not going away. This is the crucial part. The part where a person who could have chosen to let something remain as a passing attraction makes the choice that determines everything that follows. The wanting persisted through the time that should have diminished it if it was simply chemistry or novelty or the appeal of something different from the ordinary. It persisted and it deepened and it became more specific, less about the category of you and more about the actual you, the particular combination of everything you are that they had been accumulating in the thorough, attentive way of someone paying genuine attention. And then came the reckoning, the honest, this is, what am I going to do about it, reckoning of someone who has arrived at a wanting that has become undeniable, who is looking at two paths, the path towards you with everything it involves, including the gap and the external complexity that gap creates, and the path away from you towards something easier and more expected and more immediately legible to the world they inhabit, and who is asking themselves, with the genuine honesty of a real and significant choice, which path is worth walking. They chose yours. They looked at both paths with full awareness of what each required, and they chose the one that leads to you. Let me speak to the gap itself. The age difference that sits in the title of this reading, and that this person has chosen to cross rather than avoid, because it deserves direct address rather than the soft pedaling that sometimes happens around this subject. The gap is real. They know it. You know it. Anyone looking at this from the outside knows it. It creates certain conversations that would not otherwise need to happen. It places this relationship in a category that carries opinions sometimes freely shared, sometimes just as freely applied in the form of assumptions and reactions that both of you will navigate together. It means that you are at different points in your lives in ways that are not always invisible and that require a quality of communication and mutual understanding that relationships within the same age bracket do not always need. None of this is news to this person. All of it has been factored into the choosing, not minimized, not rationalized away, not pretended out of existence, looked at directly and weighed against what exists on the other side of it. What exists on the other side of it, what they found when they weighed the gap against you specifically, against the actual particular completely individual person you are, is something that outweighed the gap completely. Not slightly, not in a close call, the gap is a real concern, but I am willing to try kind of way. In the specific, this is not actually a competition way of someone who has discovered that the person they want is so specifically worth wanting that the considerations that surround the wanting cannot hold any real weight against it. You outweigh the gap. In their honest, considered, fully informed assessment, you outweigh it completely. And that assessment is not infatuation. It is not the early stage blindness of someone who has not yet encountered the full reality of the situation. It is the clear-eyed conclusion of someone who has seen the full reality and weighed it and still arrived at the same answer. You, what specifically do they see in you that produces this? Because the choice is specific, rooted in specific qualities of who you are, and naming those qualities is important for helping you understand why the gap presents itself to them, not as an obstacle, but as simply one of the conditions of getting to be with someone extraordinary. They see depth, the specific, undeniable, immediately recognizable depth of someone who has lived enough to have real interiority, who has been through things that required growth and has grown, who carries wisdom not as an affectation but as the natural result of having paid genuine attention to their own experience over time. That depth is not available in the same form in people who have not yet had the time to develop it. And depth, for someone whose own nature craves it, is not something that can be substituted with surface. However attractive the surface, they see groundedness, the quality of someone who knows who they are in a way that does not shift based on the opinion of the room, who brings the same self to different contexts, who is not performing their life but living it. That groundedness in a person of their age who is still in the process of developing their own is profoundly attractive in the specific way of something that calls out the best version of themselves. That makes them feel more settled, more real, more fully themselves in your company than in the company of people who are at the same stage of becoming. They see warmth, this specific Virgo kind, not loud, not performed, not broadcast to everyone in the room, the kind that is precise and selective and thorough, the kind that when it is directed at you makes you feel not generally appreciated but specifically known. That kind of warmth for someone who has experienced the more casual, more surface version of care in their age-adjacent relationships is something they have no interest in finding a substitute for. And they see you, the complete, unreduced, fully individual you that is the sum of all of these things and more. Not the idea of an older person, not a category. You, the specific, irreplaceable person whose particular combination of qualities has produced in them a wanting so specific and so certain that crossing the gap feels not like a sacrifice but like the obvious thing. The thing a person does when what they want is on the other side of something and what they want is worth the crossing. Let me speak to what you have been doing with whatever you feel in the direction of this person, because the reading is about their choice, but it is also inevitably about you and about the specific way you have been navigating your own experience of this connection. You have been careful in the specific, responsible, very Virgo way of someone who is aware of the gap and who has taken seriously the question of what it means and what it asks. You have not simply allowed yourself to feel whatever you feel and follow wherever it leads. You have examined, considered, asked yourself the honest questions about what this is and what it could be and what both of you would be signing up for if the connection developed into something more than what it currently is. That carefulness is appropriate and it is admirable. But I want to ask you something that I want you to answer honestly in the private space of your own interior. Has the carefulness become a way of not fully feeling what you feel? Has the responsible, measured, let me think about this carefully approach become, at some point, less about genuine discernment and more about the specific protection of not fully letting yourself want something that feels complicated, of keeping just enough distance between yourself and the full extent of your feeling that if things do not develop, you have not fully exposed yourself to the cost of wanting them to? I am not judging that. If it is true, it makes complete sense. You have lived enough to know that wanting something complicated is more costly than wanting something simple, and you have developed, as a result, a certain discipline around the full expression of complicated wants. But this person has made a choice, a real, deliberate, fully considered choice to cross the gap and come toward you, and that choice deserves to be received by the full version of you. Not the careful, managed, let me not get too far ahead of myself version. The version that feels what it feels without the protective management. The version that allows the warmth and the wanting and the specific quality of what this person produces in you to be as large as it actually is. They chose the gap to be with you. The least you can offer them is choosing yourself fully enough to receive the choosing. What does the future look like for this? What are these cards showing me about the shape of what becomes available when two people who have both made genuine choices about each other arrive in the same space at the same time with the same honesty? What I see is a love story that does not fit any of the expected templates. Not because it is trying to be different, because it actually is different. Because the specific combination of who you both are and where you each are in your lives and what you each bring to the encounter of each other creates something that has its own particular shape rather than the shape of any existing category. That particular shape, the one that belongs only to the two of you, is something neither of you has lived before. Not you in a previous relationship, not them in their younger experience. This is new territory. And new territory, while it requires navigation, that familiar territory has a quality that familiar territory can never offer. Discovery. The specific, ongoing, there is always something new here, discovery of genuinely uncharted ground. Two people who are genuinely different from each other in specific and complementary ways, finding in those differences not friction but fascination. Finding that the gap, which looked like a complication from the outside, is actually one of the most interesting things about the connection from the inside. That what each of you brings from different points in a life, with different depths of certain experiences, with different relationships to time and urgency, and what matters is more complementary than comparable, more generative than competitive. I see growth, both of you. Not the growth of one person being educated by another, not the patronizing version of the age gap dynamic that reduces it to mentor and student. The mutual growth of two people who are each expanded by genuine encounter with someone who sees the world differently from how they see it, who each become more of themselves through the specific friction and the specific ease of being known by someone who does not share all of their assumptions. And I see joy. The particular unforced, this is simply what it feels like to be with the right person, joy, that does not depend on the circumstances being perfect or the gap being invisible or the world having no opinions about the choices you have made. The joy that exists regardless, that is present in the ordinary moments, the conversations that go somewhere surprising, the laughter that arrives from angles neither of you expected, the quiet of being with someone whose presence simply feels right in a way that transcends any arithmetic of years. That joy is available already in the connection that currently exists. And what the choosing, their deliberate gap crossing, I could have anyone and I want you choosing does is give it room to grow into everything it is capable of becoming. The last thing, the thing I want to leave with you as the final word of this reading, someone younger than you, someone who has options, who has the particular abundance of choices that comes with youth and attractiveness and the specific kind of energy that draws people toward them, looked at everything available and chose you specifically with full knowledge of what the choosing required and full willingness to pay what it cost. That choice is the most honest possible answer to every quiet question you have ever asked yourself about whether you are enough, about whether someone would choose you not because you were convenient or because the circumstances made you the logical option, but because of who you actually are, because of the specific, irreplaceable, completely individual qualities that make you the person you are. The answer is yes. Demonstrated in the most concrete possible way by someone who did not have to and chose to anyway. Let that land completely. Let it reach the place where the question lives. Let it be the answer. You are the person someone chose the gap for. You are the person someone with every other option looked at and decided was worth every complication. You are enough. You have always been enough. And someone younger than you has made it their business to make sure you know it. Tell me in the comments, did this find you today? Drop chosen if something in this reading touched something real and specific in you. Tell me if this person came to mind with an immediacy that surprised you. Tell me if the quality of their choosing, the deliberate gap crossing, I could have any one quality, matches something you have been sensing, but not quite letting yourself fully believe. Because the choosing is real, and the person who made it is not going to let you forget it.